is a weapon wielded by those who cannot lead any other way. The best leaders don't use power, they use persuasion. The best citizens don't have to be forced or mandated to do things that are in the best interest for the broader community. The best citizens don't have to be forced to be good neighbors or compelled to consider the consequences of their decisions. On the issue of vaccination mandates, we should distinguish between what the federal government, states, and private employers can do. Can the federal government mandate vaccinations for everyone? Can weekly testing be ordered in lieu of vaccination? Must there be exceptions? Does the federal government mean Congress or the president or some administrative entity? If not for everyone, who can the federal government legally mandate vaccinations for? Can private companies be forced to vaccinate or test? Can they decide that on their own? What rights are implicated? What about state government? Can states order mandatory vaccinations? Are smallpox, the flu, and COVID treated differently under the law? And if so, why? There will be many questions asked over the weeks and months to come, questions of power and freedom rooted in the law, because we're a nation of laws. But we should ask ourselves some questions too, moral questions, ethical questions. Where is the line between personal freedom and protecting others? What role does personal responsibility play in a free society? What obligation do we owe one another to safeguard one another? The law can tell us what we have to do, but we should not need a law to tell us what we ought to do. Here now is Josh Blackman, professor of the South Texas College of Law, Houston. Professor, thank you for joining us. Who, if anyone, can the federal government force to get vaccinated?
Well, I think we have to start off by drawing a distinction. Vaccines are a good policy, but the president can't impose these actions unilaterally. What President Biden's tried to do is use workplace safety laws to require almost 100 million Americans to take a vaccine. I think that's a bridge too far. The laws do not support that action.
Can states do it? You say the president cannot. Can states do it?
I think they probably can. In our republic, the state governments have primary power over health, safety, and welfare of the people. The federal government has a limited power over interstate matters. I don't think the federal government can intrude on how the state governments choose to prioritize these matters.
What about private employers?
I think private employers have the greatest latitude to impose mandates on their workers. We believe in freedom of contract, and part of that contract is the workers get to work and the employers get to set the conditions. So I think the private employers have the greatest authority to get this done.
I know there's a case you and I have discussed in the past that government can't, hold you down and stick a needle in your arm, but they can fine you if you do not. Do you think the federal government has the authority to do that?
Well, keep in mind, Trey, Congress hasn't actually enacted a vaccine mandate. President Biden's relying on workplace safety laws, and those workplace safety laws don't actually fine the worker. If a person doesn't get vaccinated, the fine's imposed on the employer. It's a very smart workaround. So by fining the employer, it avoids the thorny issue of actually punishing private employees.
Is your prediction that these mandates, as issued, will be struck down by federal courts?
It's really hard to predict. I think judges are living in the same world we are, where the pandemic's been going on, and they may be sympathetic to the policies, but in an abstract sense, in a neutral lens, these policies cannot be supported. But let me make one more point. Even if in, let's say, a year, the courts say this policy is invalid, in the meantime, all these people be vaccinated, right? Biden doesn't have to win in order to win. He can win by losing if employers decide to not fight it and make this requirement imposed upon their employees right now.
Professor, thank you. Always enjoy hearing your perspective. Still ahead, a lawyer linked to Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign has been charged with